Victim or Volunteer, Part 2. The devaluation. People often regard this as one complete stage that follows the glorious seduction of the golden period. It is in fact made up of two parts. First comes the stranger period. It is so called because to you it seems like you are dealing with somebody completely different to the person that you know and love. This is when the transition occurs between the seduction and the insidious abuse that is just around the corner. This stranger period should be regarded as the calm before the storm, and if you are among the few who recognize it when it happens, it is a clear signal to you to get out. Most do not, of course, recognize it. They perhaps see it as the relationship moving beyond the honeymoon period, and since there is no horrible treatment per se, they do not realize that the stranger period, which is still a stark contrast to the golden period, is in actual fact a warning. The stranger period is at the beginning of the period of devaluation, and is a clear marker that there are far worse times ahead. You are unlikely to query this shift from golden period to the stranger period in any greater detail. Should you have done so? Should you have paid greater attention to us, just as we always have demanded? Should you have wondered why we did not answer your telephone call with the enthusiasm that we once did? Ought you to have questioned why we seemed less interested in doing things with you? Did you see it, and instead put it down to us being tired? Maybe you just thought it was because we had had a rough day at work. You asked if we were okay, and we assured you that we were, but there was no conviction in our responses. They were flat and otherworldly, but you did not press any further. Why not? Perhaps you should have done so. Perhaps if you had, you would have taken greater heed of what it was signifying. Or was it asking too much of you to realize that was coming? Nobody has any idea of what this stranger period signifies when they first encounter it. So why would you be any different? Perhaps, therefore, the view that you failed to heed this warning is a harsh one. What then of the devaluation proper, when the darkness descended and the abuse came? Of course, it is the false default setting of our kind, that everything is your fault. That is the way that we have been created. That is the way that we conduct ourselves in order to protect our fragility from criticism. We must project, blame shift, and remain unaccountable, whilst ensuring that you are regarded as culpable, liable, and blameworthy. It is part of the matrix of control that we deem necessary to apply against you. Yet, if one strips away this all too readily applied blame, what then? Would the objective observer reach the conclusion of victim or volunteer? What do you think? Do not think that this is one of our standard exercises of attributing blame. I have already conceded that such blame shifting is one of our key manipulations, but I am lifting that usual approach and posing the question as to whether during devaluation you might be regarded as a victim or volunteer. The first time we doled out a silent treatment which lasted a day, should you have known then what you were dealing with and distanced yourself? Is that unrealistic? What about when there was the second period of being frozen out, or the third? Maybe not after those. After all, you dealt with them, didn't you? Perhaps you ought to have realized when we lost our temper with you, when those savage words and insults were shouted at you. That is emotional violence. That is abusive. Why did you not walk away then? You stayed. Could it then be argued you volunteered for more dressings down? How about when we began to gaslight you? We toyed with your reality, confusing and bewildering. Did you recognize what was going on? You are clever, resourceful, and independent. Surely you knew what was happening. Besides, This was taking place alongside the shouting matches and the cold shoulders. Surely the alarm bells were ringing now, weren't they? Did you hear them and ignore them? Or did you just not hear them? What about the times when we took your car without asking, ate the food you had set aside, stopped you sleeping properly by elbowing you all night? What about the repeated stopping out late and the flirtation with other women? Surely you noticed all of that. In fact, we know you did, because we made sure you did, so as to enable us to get our precious fuel. So you experienced all of this, and yet you still stayed. Does that make you a volunteer as the abuse continued? What about the first time we shoved you back during an argument? No? How about the second time, when that shove sent you into a wall and you banged your head? No? Surely when that first slap stung your cheek, then you must have realized what was happening, and yet you stayed after that. Does that make you no longer a victim but a volunteer instead? Of course, nobody ever asked to be treated that way. You are not volunteers in that sense. But given that you must surely have realized that certain behaviors towards you were wrong, unpleasant, and downright nasty, you obviously spotted them. So why did you remain and allow yourself to be subjected to even more? You are your own person, surely. You should have realized and walked away. You might refer to not being able to because of money, housing, accommodation, children. Perhaps they are considerations, but when pitted against your own safety and sanity, which should be protected first? Accordingly, reflecting on all that happened to you, the repeated manipulative and abusive behaviors, which were never isolated examples, but rather repeated and increasing violations against you, could it be said that you were a victim, or did you in fact volunteer by remaining in the firing line? What are your observations? Putting aside my usual blaming behaviors, I would offer you this conclusion. To volunteer is to be able to exercise a degree of decision-making control over your own person. You were never allowed that control. We took it.